Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to Cruiser Chat with Otram. Same as every week, nothing on the docket, nothing planned. I put a link in the chat window that if you want to click on that, that'll let you call in live, kind of like a Zoom call. So you can use that if you want, or you can just type into the chat window, whichever you prefer. Um, but yeah, no real plan tonight, just here to answer questions. And good evening to you, Nate. Um, yeah, nothing on the docket. Just hanging out to answer cruiser questions. Um, and nothing really new and exciting going on at the shop this week. We've been really slow. I'm guessing with the government shutdown, and all of our local people are government employees, but the shop's been slow. So I've been taking advantage and editing more videos. Um, yeah, the only super cool thing we've had a new engine in an 80 that we've been working on getting back together, and we've been waiting on parts, and finally got the last of the parts yesterday and did first fire up on it. And, everything's running great, test driving it, breaking it in. So that's fun. It's always nice when those really long-term projects fire up and everything goes smoothly. Um, but yeah, and then I've got a 60 FJ60 that I'm working on that I rebuilt the carb on, and it's been a couple of years since I've rebuilt a carb, and it was nice because that one fired right up too. And Turbo FZJ, it's at the top of the chat window. It should be the first thing is the call in link. And let me see, let me see if I can. Hey, it will let me repaste it. I guess luckily that was the last thing I copied. Nate wants to know what's my experience with deleting the ABS in an 80 series. I have zero experience with it. I've never done it myself. Um, my brother deleted the ABS on his, but I haven't driven it or even ridden in it since he did. So I don't have any firsthand experience with it. I think we had one truck a year or two ago that came through the shop that had deleted ABS. Um, but yeah, I don't have any firsthand experience with doing it. Yeah, and says my ABS is disabled, not by choice. It's fine. Yeah, we have had several trucks come through. Like that the ABS motor is no longer motoring. Like the motor's locked up, and yeah, it by default disables the ABS, and I don't really notice any difference driving it. Um, my daily driver is a little Lexus CT200H, basically a Prius, and the whole brake controller failed on it, so I don't have ABS on that right now either. And let's let Turbo FZJ in. And it looks like you're in.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. Okay, I'm gonna mute my TV here. Hey, it's Turbo FCJ80 Brent Palmer. Um, had the rig since '96. It was a family car. Finally got a hold of it back in like '08. Um, I've been on here a few times, obviously. So long time listener, first time caller. Um, all right, so I got some notes for you. Just a couple quick questions. Okay, so I've got a Safari Turbo back from 2000 from Slee,
Hmm.
out of Australia or whatever. I redid the turbo, repiped everything. The turbo was kind of on its last legs. I also dropped a piece of a porcelain off the spark plug in the top end, so I redid the motor and also the turbo. That was a bad mistake. Anywho, so my AFR gauge. First question, I guess, what do you use, and is it wideband or narrowband? Because mine it's an old autometer, with the three stages. Is not just an actual number.
Yeah.
Obviously you lean, Stoich, and then rich. Mine's always pegged rich. Always. I've run at about 7.5 to 8.5 psi on the turbo. Sometimes it'll peg out at 10, but and I've got MR2 spark plugs in it. So I guess first question is, are you wideband or narrowband? And then where do you hook it up?
Mine is an AEM wideband,
Okay.
and it's one of the Bosch wideband sensors, and it's in the downpipe, and I want to say it's toward the top,
Okay.
like not directly on the turbo outlet, but not as far down as like where the oxygen sensors are on an 80.
So in between like the actual turbo coming off, and then kind of in between there and the top
I
upper.
want to say I'm like right around frame rail height.
Frame rail. Okay, perfect.
Just it was where it was easy to fit it and not so close to the turbo that I was worried about smoking it.
Right.
Yeah, but it's a wideband AEM, and idling, I sit at like 14.7, 14.9. And then under load, it dips down to like 10.5. Yeah, and it runs
And
rich.
10.5. I mean, under load. Are you in it like foot to the floor, under boost?
Yeah. Under boost, it goes down to like 10.
Like a full peg.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what in the specs on that motor with everything that you're running the turbo or whatever? What do you think is safe on the lean side?
Like I wouldn't want to go any leaner than 14.7.
Okay. So under load, you're 10.5.
Yeah. So under load, it's richening up.
Yep.
And
I guess rich doesn't really matter because you're just gonna glug anyways.
Yeah.
So anything over 14.7, no go.
Yeah, like when I let off the throttle and throttle completely closed, it'll dip 15.5, 16.
Okay.
When it goes, because it shuts the injectors off when you go close throttle like that.
Right.
And then it must go leaner than that, but my gauge stops reading.
Right, because you're off.
And if it may make a difference in my readings, but I'm also spraying methanol under load.
You had to throw that in. Okay.
But
okay, how did you do that?
It's an AEM again, meth injection kit. My fuel readings read about the same whether I'm spraying meth or not.
Okay.
It just seems to I was getting some ping and roughness.
Yep.
At the top end under boost without it.
Okay.
Even running, premium.
93.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was like, you know what? It can't hurt to add. And when I first put it all up, I jetted it way too high, and you could hear it hydrolocking the engine.
Okay. That makes sense.
Okay, that's too much meth.
Yeah.
So
that's what they said. Okay, so where did you hook up the AEM injectors at?
it's a single injector, and my it comes like my turbo, like I don't have an intercooler, so it's just out of the turbo into my throttle body, and it's just my injector. It's kind of right above the valve cover, just
Okay.
going into the intake pipe right there.
Okay. I have an old I guess it's 30 years old, 30-year-old Safari intercooler crammed into the front. So could I throw it in line in that air to air?
I don't see why not. I'd
Because
prob
I've thought about like hooking up a garden sprayer, actuate it when I'm pulling up hills here in Arizona, like going up to Flagstaff or Prescott or even Payson. So I don't have to turn off the AC in the middle of 120-degree summers. But
yeah.
that's kind of a myth. I've never tried it, but
Yeah, I would probably put it closer to the throttle body.
okay.
I would worry that if you put it like pre-intercooler, that it would condense out
Yep.
going through the intercooler. I have no idea. Like I'm not a turbo expert.
So
I kind of just
you're okay. So on the intake side, when you're squirting in the meth there, you're between the MAF and the intake.
I'm between the turbo and the intake.
Turbo and the intake. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Okay, cool. All right, that helps a bunch. All right, sweet. This call-in thing is way easier.
And that's like I used to do like, the normal chat.
Well, you're limited to characters, so it's hard to like get all this out into one thread.
Yeah, and
So
it's
even if you like tip, you're still limited,
yeah. And I did a trial run using a different software, I guess about a year ago. But because it was on a different platform, nobody ever got on.
Right.
So I was like, okay, I'll bring it back onto YouTube, but add this link so that you can do the call in.
Okay. All right, I got one more question if you have 2 or 3 more minutes for me.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just sent a link in the video chat.
Let me see.
Whatever this app is called.
Yeah.
Riverside. Okay, it's an Amazon link.
That popped me up to a Breakmaster cylinder tester center. Okay.
Okay, so I've basically been off work for 9 months, paid, but I've been down the YouTube rabbit holes for way too long. So I was watching something where they were having issues between the brake booster and the master cylinder.
Mm-hmm.
And the push rod coming out of the brake booster is either too long or too short, creating less vacuum or more vacuum. And I think, like, I don't know, a few episodes ago with you, I mentioned that I have a non-OEM brake booster because I didn't want to spend the $900 during COVID. So there was another guy on YouTube that had an OEM and then also a non-OEM sitting on the rear tailgate of his 80 series. And he was like, oh my God. And he showed a video or a picture of the non-OEM versus the OEM and the length of the push rod. And that's that 8 millimeters, if that rings a bell. So I bought one of these things. It was like $10. I haven't done it yet, but if you have an OEM brake booster on the shelf at your shop or the next time, if I send you this, could you measure what the push rod length is so that I can cross-reference it with my non-OEM?
I don't have a factory one.
But you will. Someone's going to come in.
You know what? It's probably been a year or two since I've done a booster in an 80.
Okay. Should I just bite the bullet and get the OEM?
So, like, we use the Seiken branded ones.
Okay.
And I've never had a problem out of the push rods on those.
Okay.
Like, I've always just eyeballed them up compared to the one that, came out.
Okay. I did not do that, and then I returned the core. So that's my problem, I guess.
And that's yeah, and so the tool you linked looks a
Hmm.
lot like the factory tool you're supposed to have.
Yep, it is.
Um, so I may pick one of those up.
Okay. Yeah,
Uh,
they look pretty cool. I watched this. It was like on an old hot rod, like your old people with their 67 Camaros and stuff.
yeah,
No offense to them, but I was like, holy shit, this is perfect.
yeah.
And then on that same topic, real quick, so I'm running part-time full-wheel drive. I got
Hmm.
the, I don't know, ABM,
Hmm.
Australian crap that it's impossible to find the gaskets to. But I think, so I have to lock my center diff when I'm in 2x
Hmm.
because of the viscous coupler or whatever. So my ABS comes off.
Yeah.
Now the brake fluid pressure, I'm assuming, could possibly be the issue when I'm running in two-wheel drive. The ABS is off. Would that have any effect on brake line pressure?
It shouldn't.
Okay. Is it like
Um,
it's a separate system internally, so it should shut off and not
yeah,
create any kind of um, air bubbles or anything?
yeah. I don't think it will.
Okay.
And we've got plenty of customers that run part-time kits.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, I mean, pretty much when you're running the part-time kit, it turns your ABS off because your front speed sensors are on the burfs and they're not
Correct.
spinning when the hubs are
Right.
unlocked.
Right. Okay. Well, that helps a ton. Yeah, this chat thing or the phone in or video is awesome, by the way.
Yeah, it's funny. Nobody ever does it, and like every time I'm like, "Hey, I've got the link."
Now, this is
Um,
like, I don't know, 12 to 14 minutes, and I got all my questions answered. And you're able to like respond back instantly and be like, no, 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 no.
yeah,
No, it's great. Awesome.
very cool.
Sweet. Well, I'm going to disconnect and I'll continue watching.
Cool.
How do
Sounds
we
good.
get this thing going? We got to spread the word. This is awesome.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's fun to pop on here.
Yeah. Well, I need a job, so let me know. All right. Thanks so
Yeah.
much.
Unfortunately, I'm in Virginia.
No, I'm moving to Pennsylvania, so good to go.
That is a downgrade from Arizona.
I know. I know. Well, it's a lot cheaper.
And at least you said Prescott right.
No, no, no. I'm in Scottsdale. Sorry, Phoenix. Yeah, it's a whole different world here. So it's awful. All right. Well, thanks so much.
Cool. Yeah, no problem.
Appreciate
Have a
it.
good one. Cool. And that was how the call in live works. So yeah, anybody has live questions, feel free to use the link. It'll work like that. Otherwise, you can type them into the chat. Um, but yeah, and hopefully his audio came through on the other end. I can hear it in my mic or my headphones. Hopefully you guys could too. And I just added the master cylinder tester that he had linked to my cart on Amazon because that looks handy. And I just had a thought of something that was going on at the shop that I was going to share, but it passed through just as fast as it showed up. Oh, I was going to ask, since a lot of the people that tune into the chat are also the folks that are watching the YouTube channel, would you guys be interested in more like testing diagnostics videos on cruisers? Um, I think I figured out how to screen record my oscilloscope and stuff when I'm using it. I've actually got a bunch of footage that I need to edit out a video from checking timing issues on a 4-liter Forerunner. But if you guys are interested in more like diagnostics and testing videos as opposed to repair videos, I will try to shoot more of them. And Solar Vibe wants to hear more about the turbo process. I am probably not the right person to do deep dive on turbo process. I made my own turbo for my 80, but I kind of wung it. Like I just looked up the specs for the turbo that the Wits End kit was using, and got that turbo, and then made my own exhaust manifold. Like it's a tubular full manifold instead of J pipes, like that's common on the kits. And slapped the turbo on it, and just kind of fiddling with it from there. But I really don't know what I'm doing. I just, kind of copy and paste stuff I found on the internet. It's a lot of fun, but it's a lot of tweaking, and I'm sure it doesn't help that, my truck is like super high mileage and worn out. But yeah, it's fun. But I know just enough about turbos to kind of kludge a system together that works on my truck. But it's also not a daily driver. Like I've probably got less than 1,000 miles on it since I've done it, and I did it like 2 years ago. So long-termness, I don't know how long it'll hold up, but yeah, I'm super happy I did it. It makes it super fun to drive. It's just a lot of tweaking and messing with it, to keep it happy. And comment that recently had a tune-up done at the shop, and have to say that the difference in performance and acceleration is incredible. Yeah, it's amazing how much plugs and wires will wake up a truck. Like, cause the plugs just slowly wear out over time, and you don't notice it. And then, yeah, when you do replace it, it makes a huge difference. So glad it was awesome. And Dan Halen wants to know if we have a brand we go to when replacing front and rear sway bar bushings and related parts. Honestly, we just use the parts store ones. If we're in a hurry, we use Toyota if we can wait for them to come in. But like our local hub doesn't ever seem to stock the sway bar stuff, so it takes a while. So we'll just use, like a house brand, sway bar kits from the parts stores. And haven't had any issues with them. And question, have 200,000 miles on a 1996 with 80 psi compression in number 5, but no evidence of coolant in the oil analysis. Is a head gasket ruled out since there's no coolant? Not necessarily. It depends on how much it's leaking. I would assume if you've dropped down to 80 psi that you would be showing a lot of coolant. But it's always hard to say. I I don't do compression tests hardly ever at the shop because they don't really tell you anything other than how much compression the engine can make. We do leak down tests where you roll the cylinder up to top dead center, and then you put compressed air in through the spark plug hole and measure how fast that air is leaking out, because that tells you how big of a leak you've got for combustion or for compression. And it also tells you where, like if you hear it coming out the intake, it's intake valves. If it's coming out the exhaust pipe, it's exhaust valves. If it's coming out the oil fill, it's rings. So I find that to be a much more effective test. And you can also kind of do that backwards because you're forcing air into the cylinder. If you see bubbles coming out the radiator, then you know the head gasket's leaking. It won't always catch small head gasket leaks, but bigger ones you can find it. But it will show you where your compression's leaking. So it's a lot easier to do that way. And Andrew wants to know why do you call yourself Otram? So Otram is the shop, not me. I'm Ryan. Realize I never actually say that in any of the videos. When I started the company, I was a mobile mechanic. So like I went to people's houses and fixed cars and stuff in people's driveways. So the original name of the business is On the Road Again Mobile Mechanic. And the email was otram@otram.com because it was way too long to type out On the Road Again Mobile Mechanic. And so everybody just started calling us Otram for short. And when I moved into a brick and mortar building and stopped doing mobile, I just shortened it up to Otram. And it stuck that way. And then 93, 80 series randomly won't engage the starter, maybe 30, 40 times, with the key, then it will start. Starter relay, replace a starter 2 years ago, but don't drive it that much. So does it click when you turn the key? Like, does the starter click or does the starter not do anything? Because if the starter clicks, my guess it's contacts. If it doesn't click, it's somewhere upstream, between the ignition switch and the starter. But 95% of the time, it's the starter contacts. And then Christopher wants to know, is there a secret to finding top dead center on a cylinder on the compression stroke in a leak down test? So you can they make a thing called a top dead center whistle, and it's just a whistle that threads into the spark plug hole. And as you're running the engine over, it'll whistle as you're coming up to top dead center because the valves are closed and it's building compression. So I'll use that to get me close, but really you're going to have to hold the breaker bar or the ratchet against the compression or the pressure of you putting air in, and you can feel it. Like as you pull it tighter, you'll hit the valves closing and you'll feel the spot where you've got maximum compression, maximum sealing, and you can watch it on the leak down gauge. And if you pass it, you'll lose pressure again. So that's the way I do it. I just feel for it. And yes, if your leak down test shot coolant out the throttle body hose, I would guess that's a bad head gasket. Or somehow cylinder pressure is getting into the cooling system. So yeah, bad head gasket, cracked head, which I've only seen once. But yeah, if your leak down test comes out the throttle body hose, that's not a good sign. And Turbo FCJ80 seems to agree that the turbo setup is insane. hard and constant tweaking, the juice is worth the squeeze. And to Duckworth, yeah, if the starter's clicking, I would suspect contacts. I mean, it could be, a voltage issue, like you're not passing enough voltage to close the contacts, but it's on a Toyota starter, it is almost always contacts. And if you used like a reman starter when you replaced it, a lot of times they don't seem to put new contacts in them. Not sure what they're remanning if they're not doing the contacts. But we've seen a lot of those fail prematurely. And on the subject of bad head gaskets, the truck we just put the new motor in came in with a blown head gasket leaking horrendously. And when we got the new engine running, it burned out all the coolant that was in the cats and the exhaust. And you couldn't see in Crash's side of the shop for like 45 minutes. It was so fogged up with coolant steam. Oop. And yeah, Magnuson, I think they are making the superchargers again. And yeah, the TRD superchargers are also an awesome setup and a lot less tweaking than a turbo. They're like you put it on there and drive it kind of thing. We've done a bunch of those at the shop and they are awesome. And I wouldn't jump directly to replacing the contacts. I would, I'd pop the back cover off and check them, to see how worn they are. But yeah, if they're worn, you can just replace the contacts. Well, and it's been a long time since I ordered them, but they were like $50 or $60 for contacts and a plunger last time I got them from Toyota. And that's the other thing. You can get the two contacts that the starter wires bolt to, but you also want the plunger that goes up and down because that wears and pits too. And as far as how often they go bad, I would expect, a decade out of them. They take, I mean, I guess it depends on how often you start your vehicle, but they should last a long time. It just seems I don't know if the aftermarket rebuilds aren't replacing the contacts or if they're just using like really poor quality contacts that don't fit well. But yeah, they seem to fail faster. And yeah, I have seen the prices on the new supercharger. And I guess that's what we get with inflation. But man, I remember back in the day, when everybody was like, "Oh, these are so expensive," and they were like $3,000. So now that they've nearly tripled. But I guess it's also a super niche market that Magnuson is, at least still supporting with the re-release of it. I can't imagine they're selling, tons of them, and they've got all the castings and machining and everything to do. So I would really doubt they're getting the economies of scale to get that price down much further. So yeah, they're super expensive, but I don't know that they could make them any cheaper. Unless everybody goes out and orders one, then maybe. Um, and then I'm rebuilding the 1FZFE, the one with the bad head gasket and spun rods. Would you clean and test the injectors yourself or send them out? I would send them out. We had one of the cheap, like Amazon clean and test injector flow setups at the shop for a while. And it worked, but it was always finicky, and it was always one of those, okay, is the machine not working or the injector's not working? So I would send them out to somebody that actually can legitimately clean and flow match them. Back before we got that tool, on my own stuff, I would just throw injectors in an ultrasonic, and that worked fairly well. But every now and then you would kill an injector, and it's another one of those. It's like, okay, was the injector already bad, or did I kill it by putting it in the ultrasonic? So I would send them out, and we've had quite a few times where we've had a truck apart for an extended period of time, doing a head gasket, doing a motor, whatever. Where, the fuel rail is just sitting on the shelf, and then we put everything back together, and we've got a misfire because the injectors got sticky sitting out. And most of the time, you could just run a heavy dose of BG44K through, and it would clean them out. But there's a couple of times we've had to go in afterward and replace injectors. So it's probably worth the money to send them out, get them cleaned, get them flow matched, and then what you're putting in there. And then, you're starting from a good starting point, and you're not trying to chase things. Because like you're saying, you don't know that the injectors are bad, but pretty much everything else on this engine was jacked. And we've had some that we put the truck all back together, and then it's like, okay, did I miss something? Did I get a bad spark plug? Is something unhooked wiring wise? Like, why do we have a misfire? And then it turns out it's just a sticky injector from being, sitting, for a month or two. And it's always a pain when you're going through trying to rule those things out. So I could see a benefit of sending the injectors out, just having one less issue to worry about. And yeah, turbo CJ. Yeah, supercharged is expensive, but bolt on in a weekend. Turbo is a week and involves so much more. Supercharged is a bargain. Yeah. Supercharged is definitely a bargain. Like I did my turbo, on the cheap because I made the manifolds, I made the intake plumbing, I made the downpipe, all that myself. And I've still got several thousand in it just in parts. And then I've got a boost controller, I've got meth injection, I've got a turbo timer, all that jazz on top of it. And do I have a place to recommend to send the injectors? I know there was one people always used, and I want to say it starts with it was initials. It was like RC Injector Service or something. I've heard of people using a place called Witch Hunter. And then there used to be, I don't know if they're still available, but Linder, I think it's Linder Injector Service that's in the Midwest somewhere. I know Jim Linder, the owner, does a lot of training on fuel injection diagnostics. But yeah, like that dude is a wealth of knowledge on fuel injection. So if he's still doing fuel injectors, that's where I would send them. But I don't know if they still do injector services or if he just teaches now. And if you ever run into the exhaust barely touching the frame on the passenger side and giving off a slight rattle. Yes. We see it quite commonly with aftermarket exhaust, especially like we only use Toyota downpipes or MagnaFlow. We've seen some not MagnaFlow or Toyota ones, like I'm assuming it was a Bosel, that the actual downpipe slants down just a little more than factory, and it lowers, it lowers the cats and it lowers that pipe that crosses over the frame rail to where it rattles. I've also seen where the hanger mount that's right behind the cats, it fails, and it'll let it droop down, and you'll rub, or like aftermarket, or not aftermarket, but like muffler shop welding the mounts on crooked, same thing, because it's such a really tight where it comes in and wraps. Hold on, I am thinking wrong. Because I'm thinking my exhaust where it goes over the frame rail, and how we used to run when I made stainless exhaust for the 80s. We ran it over the frame rail, and it could get tight there. But factory runs it under. But yeah, like I've seen, just weird aftermarket fitments causing that, or even just, hitting them on the rocks can, whack things out and make them rattle. Same with where it goes over the cross member by the rear axle. We see them hit there pretty regularly too. But a lot of times, like you can tweak the hangers to get them to stop. And Andrew says it'd be nice if somebody made an over the frame kit to bolt up. And we used to, when I did stainless exhaust for the 80s, we got rid of the second cat and bolted straight to the downpipe cat and then hooked up over the frame rail and went back. And that's the problem with doing an over the frame rail kit, is there's not enough room for both cats. So you end up losing that back cat, which, technically is deleting an emissions device, which is why we stopped making them. Even though we had the front cat still, and everything was, reading right, it was still like a visual fail. So that, among other things, that and just, even with as much as we were charging for those exhausts, we weren't making any money on them. So we stopped doing them. But yeah, I much prefer the routing where it goes up over the frame rail, because I know, at least the way I drive, I would smash the bejesus out of it under the frame rail. And that was the worst part of the kit to make out of, 2.5-inch mandrel tubing, was getting the pieces lined up right to go up over the frame rail without hitting anything. Out of all the parts on that kit, those took me the longest time to hand fit in the jigs, because you couldn't just use off-the-shelf bends for that. And back when I was looking at expanding on the stainless exhaust, like I took everything up to a shop in Maryland that does, CNC mandrel bending, and I had them laser scan everything and do test bends. and they could do all of the exhaust except that over the frame section. They told me I'd have to keep making that one by hand. And Andrew wants to know thought on the toy 9.5-inch diffs. Ever seen any of them grenade when run up front, a la 4060 series? Thinking about a custom front with 32 spline pinion 9.5 instead of the high pinion 8. So like the 40 and the 60 were a 9.5 front. They just weren't high pinion. They're the low pinion, same as the rear. And I've seen the front one's grenade. I've seen the back one's grenade. You can do some beating on them, but you can blow up a 9.5 without too much difficulty. I've probably seen more 9.5s blown up than high pinion 8s. But yeah, I don't see the point in doing a custom axle and keeping the 9.5 unless you're just trying to keep it Toyota. And yeah, Andrew says, I need the over the frame rail mandrel pipe to connect into a 93, 94 style muffler. And don't mind if I only have one cat. Yeah, like the county I live in doesn't have emissions testing, but they'll still fail you for visual. So you've got to be careful there. But that pipe should be easy enough for any muffler shop to make. Yeah, it's not a crazy hard part. Duckworth says, check engine lights on, code 25, left O2 sensor bad. Sensor says discontinued, put in a right sensor, runs fine, but always has the code. Any advice? Or just live with it? So code 25 doesn't necessarily mean oxygen sensor. It just means you're running, I think 25 is rich. It's 25 and 26. One of them's rich, one of them's lean. I think 25's rich. I always have to look it up. Just about every time I've seen that problem, it has been O2 sensor. But I mean, it could be an injector stuck open. It could be mass airflow sensor reading wrong. It can be the coolant temp sensor overfueling. So it's one of those you've got to like actually go down the rabbit hole of diagnostics to find out why it's got a code 25, which on a 93, 94 engine sucks because they're pre-OBD2 and there's no real data stream. Even running the old MasterTech scan tool for them, you don't get a great data stream. So I hate doing it, but you've got to go through the whole diagnostics tree because it doesn't always mean oxygen sensor. And then, oops, wrong one. I'll come back to that one in a second. Having issues starting the truck when cold outside, RPMs drop and often just turns off if I don't give it gas. Only happens when cold outside. Any lead, 97 Land Cruiser. I would put a scan tool on it that lets you read and actually watch the data stream, and I would see what the engine coolant temp is saying. Because if the engine coolant temp sensor, which is different than the one that feeds the gauge on the dash, if that's bad, it reads negative, it tells the computer that it's negative 40 and throws way more fuel than you need. So that would be the first thing I would look at. But it's hard to say. I can't say that I've ever diagnosed one for hard starting only when it's cold. But the coolant temp sensor would be my first thing I would look at. For differential gear swaps, since Zook is not doing them anymore, can you do them or recommend somebody? I didn't know Zook wasn't doing them anymore. I believe Cruiser Outfitters does them. East Coast Gear Supply does them. I'm pretty sure Valley Hybrids out in Stockton does them. I've pretty much stopped doing gear swaps because the quality of the gears got so crappy. I've had several, like where you're tightening up the pinion nut to crush the crush sleeve, and instead of crushing the crush sleeve, it just strips the nut or strips the threads off the pinion, because it was like they forgot to heat treat it. It just, yeah, I still do them occasionally, but I try to stay away from doing them. That and the fact that for some reason gear swaps got commoditized and got a really low price tag attached to them, and nobody wants to pay the time it actually takes to do them right. So yeah, long story short, I don't usually do them anymore. Like I occasionally do them, but it's not that often. I would try East Coast Gear Supply, Cruiser Outfitters, Valley Hybrids, those guys. And Turbo FCJ wants to know, what about running oval exhaust pipes instead of round? Saw a bunch of guys at SEMA builds running ovals to make extra clearance. Yeah, as long as the area, the cross-sectional area is the same, I mean, it shouldn't make a difference. Like the 80 series, where it goes over the cross member in the back, it's squished down to oval shaped. So that should be fine. It was funny, the first time we ordered a factory 80 series exhaust in at our local dealer, they were about to send it back because they thought it was damaged in shipment, where it was squashed right where it goes over the frame rail. I'm like, no, that's the way it's supposed to look. It's cool. We want it. And I should look and see if you can still get Japanese lower ratio ring and pinions. The rear ring and pinion in my truck, they're Japanese, because when I went to do that rear axle, 20 years ago, it was when all of the U.S. ring and pinion manufacturing was getting shipped overseas to like China and India, and like nobody had any in stock, and I ended up finding a set of 529s in Japan and ordering those in, and those were really, really nice gears, and those have held up to some abuse, because they were in my buggy before they were in my 80. And same, my front gears are a USA made set, that are, they've got to be 25 years old at this point. And they've held up well. So I guess I should say if I could still get Japanese lower ring and pinion gears, I wouldn't mind putting those in. And I guess I'm going to jump off of here a few minutes early if we don't have more questions. I'm fighting a cold this evening and I'm starting to lose my voice. But like FZJ80 was saying, spread the word because the more people that come on and ask questions, the more better. So yeah, it'd be awesome if this could grow more. And Andrew says, good input on the 9.5-inch diffs. I assume 30 spline burst die before front 9.5 ring and pinion. Would go to toy 9.5 over Dana 60 mainly due to weight and ground clearance. Yeah, I mean the 9.5 diffs hold up to a lot, but I have seen them get spectacularly exploded. But same with Dana 60, same with everything else. And Dan Halen wants to know, do I ever bring extra parts for front knuckle or knuckle arms when off-roading? I don't. I've never had reason to. It wouldn't hurt to have the gaskets, but I've always just slammed them back together without gaskets when I needed to, and then just redid everything when I got home. But yeah, I used to carry the whole kitchen sink, and now I just carry basic tools because all I'm really trying to do is get the truck back to where I can get it legitimately fixed. Like I'm not doing hardcore repairs on the trail. I just need to get it back to camp or back to where I can get it back to the shop. So I don't carry a ton anymore because it was a whole bunch of extra weight that I didn't need. And Von Dutch wants to know, can you add hand throttle for warm up on a 3FE80? I've never done it. I don't see why you couldn't. You're just adding an extra throttle cable, with an adjustment. So I don't see why you couldn't. And for some reason, my chat window keeps freaking out. Does anybody make a new engine harness for 9380s? I rebuilt my own, but it took about a month, but was an exact match. Old one was roached. It was tough to get new connectors and had to use some of the originals. As far as I know, that's discontinued from Toyota. At least last time we called on one, because I've got a 94 at the shop that we're putting an engine in, and I wanted to do a new harness in it, and it wasn't available when I called. But yeah, it's one of there's a lot to the 93, 94s that's starting to go discontinued, and you just can't get them. So we've started shying away from doing much work on the engines on 93, 94s, at least like fuel injection diagnosis and testing, because there's like so much that you can't get the parts to fix, and you'll go through all the testing and then tell somebody, yeah, I spent all the time testing, here's your problem, but hey, I can't fix it, there's no parts. Which gets to be a lot of fun. But yeah, with that said, I'm gonna jump off of here. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. Thanks for everybody that asked questions. Because without people tuning in and asking questions, this doesn't exist. But yeah, spread the word so we can get more people on here. And I will catch you guys not next week because next week is Thanksgiving, so I won't be on. But week after that, we'll be back. So I'll catch you guys then. Thanks for tuning in.